Hello and welcome to the EDM Prodcast. If you're new here, this is a show where we interview artists, producers, and basically anyone in the industry of electronic music production. Now, today we have a very special guest, someone who I've been wanting to get on ever since I became the host of this podcast, and that is Steve Duda. Now, Steve and I were emailing a while back after I sent him a link to an article where we mentioned his famous synth Serum, and I asked him if he wanted to come on, and to my surprise, he was very keen. So now, if you're not aware of who Steve Duda is, he's the founder of Xfer Records and the creator, as I mentioned, of the super popular synth Serum. Now, he's been in the industry for a very long time, both as an artist and as the runner of a software company, so he has a wealth of knowledge and experience to share with us all as producers. We dive into his background and about how he studied music composition in college and how that essentially opened the door for many opportunities out there, despite the normal career trajectory of teaching at a university. And this chain reaction of events set off and led to things like him having a short DJ career in leagues with people like deadmau5 and Skrillex, and then eventually on discovering this whole concept of meta music, which led him to then taking up programming and creating tools for producers to use. We then dive into the massive success of Serum and how it performed better than he could ever have imagined, including his rent-to-own partnership with Splice and how that helped things along the way. Steve is also excellent at drawing parallels between both music production and programming, so he has a lot of really great advice for those of you who are producers out there. Now, this episode in particular is brought to you by Create 30. Now, Create 30 is our new cohort-based course for producers who want to create 30 song ideas in 30 days. Along the way, we'll be providing you with a framework for generating ideas, having bi-weekly calls to keep you on track, and having a community to keep you accountable and so you have people to grow with together. We are super excited about launching this for the first time, so if you want to join the first cohort starting in September, head to create30.com. But without further ado, let's get onto the EDM Prodcast with Steve Duda. Awesome. Welcome everybody to the EDM Prodcast. Today we are here with the illustrious Steve Duda, founder of Xfer Records and creator of the infamous Serum. Steve, how's it going, man?
It's going great. How you doing?
Yeah, doing really well, man. Sunday morning? No, it's not Sunday morning. It's Wednesday morning here for me. So just waking up and getting ready for the day.
Nice.
You're in Mexico at the moment, right?
I am in Mexico. Yeah, I moved down here a couple months ago. It's just really wanted to change of life after, kind of quarantine, lockdown and everything.
Totally.
My wife and I decided that getting out of California, getting out of LA would be good for us just to have a change, and settled on Mexico. And it's been really everything that I kind of hoped for, learning new stuff, new culture, new language. Meeting friendly folks and also just enjoying good weather and all that. And so it's been a really great move, actually.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I can imagine it would be an ideal move. Did they have kind of less intense restrictions there and stuff like that?
Yeah, things operate differently here for sure. Coming from United States, the biggest difference I notice really is in like service industry stuff, which is kind of hit and miss. Some people are actually really on the ball, but in general, like you have to call and then call back, and then they tell you, oh, you have to talk to someone else, and that kind of thing happens. Banking is well behind the times. Everything you kind of have to do in person and wait in line and all that. But the government is pretty reasonable. I mean, in the sense for foreigners, they really are well aware that outside investment is a great thing.
Cool.
So they really encourage people to come down here and make it pretty easy to get residency. And even if you don't have residency, you can live here 6 months with just a tourist visa, which you don't even have to apply for. You just basically show up and you're good for 6 months. So,
that's awesome. That's a good heads up if anyone's ever wanting to escape their lockdown. It's been very similar here in Australia. Like, it's been a pretty intense lockdown. So,
right.
Mexico, good shout. Um, awesome, man. To kick things off, I want to talk a little bit about your background. I know you've mentioned in previous interviews like a kind of a bit of about your background already, so I won't like kind of rehash what you've already said. But like, I think if I'm not mistaken, you studied music production at college. Is that right?
Kind of, yeah. I studied music composition was like my
Yeah.
official major. So I went to University of California at Santa Cruz, and the UC system pretty much tries to force everyone into kind of normal
Yeah.
vocational majors in a sense, sort of academic majors, right? Things that you could then go be a teacher of, essentially. And so the music program at the time was very limited to being an instrument major, like
Right.
piano or whatnot, or else being a composition major. And I was really interested in being like a great piano player, and I was practicing 6 hours a day almost in high school,
Wow.
just really devoting myself to playing keyboards as much as I could. But I just started a little late. I didn't get into keyboards, piano until like I was 13. And I realized the first week at college that, there were kids that started at age 3 where they were just shredding beyond what
Yeah.
I knew I was going to be able to achieve. And so I was like, well, not going to be a concert pianist, that's for sure. And sort of still wanted to do music, still, had so much passion about it. So I chose a composition degree instead of the
Yeah.
piano one. But simultaneously at the UC, there was a electronic music program. And we had sort of some legendary people like, John Cage came through. We had
Wow.
Gordon Muma, who was a pioneer in electronic music in the 60s, was one of
Mm.
my professors. And Peter Elsey was another one who was like a columnist for Mix Magazine, EQ Magazine, stuff like that. And was just your general like studio wizard in the old school sense of having, the
Mm.
pocket protector with the pens and was like soldering all the equipment and stuff like that.
Wow.
So having that sort of little electronic music program, it definitely was under nurtured and was like run out of the communications building and just like a couple extra rooms basically. But we
Yeah.
had trunk lines so you could run audio between the different rooms and a bunch of rack gear and tape machines and some old analog synthesizers and just had a lot of fun messing around with that stuff there a bit. But
Mm.
simultaneously, I've been amassing my own studio gear. So
Yeah.
where most of the kids had to do the projects and book the studio time, I would just do the projects at home on my MIDI rig with my 4 channels of audio I could run on the computer, which at the time was really cutting edge.
Yeah.
The computers at that time, which I guess was early 90s, processor speeds were in the megahertz, not even gigahertz, right? So you had like a
Yeah.
33 megahertz computer, and it could just squeeze out some MIDI.
Yeah.
It really didn't have enough power to do digital audio, but these sound cards started coming out that would allow you to do digital audio kind of at the same time. So your DAW or primitive DAW would just be spitting out a few little numbers and spooling data off disk and getting that
Wow.
data to the sound card, which would handle the actual like setting the gain of the audio and stuff like that. So I had an
Crazy.
early DigiDesign system called Sound Tools 2. That was the predecessor to the Pro Tools
Yeah.
legacy. And so Sound Tools 2, yeah, I got 4 tracks of digital audio, but you also put up with the bugs back at the time. It was really bleeding edge stuff. I
Yeah.
had this bug where I could only play the song from bar 1. If I tried to play
Oh.
from any other point, it would crash. So
Oh,
I'd make a
damn.
change to the second verse or the second chorus, and then I'd have to start the song at the start and
Yeah.
leave the room and be like, okay, I'm just going to come back and listen to my edit in
It's
2
amazing
minutes.
how like you look at DAWs like Ableton nowadays, and you're like, it's pretty simply laid out, and like the user interface is pretty good, but like the technology and years that have gone into the simplicity, like behind the fact that you can just consolidate this one audio clip and now move around the whole thing. That's just like when you look back at that, it's just insane how far we've come. Like,
Yeah. The processor speed stuff is just mind blowing. The, data capacity stuff. all of that stuff is one of the things that really like makes me feel my age and not feel like a kid anymore. Is just remembering, I spent $2,400 on a 1 gigabyte hard disk, which was like the size of a toaster oven.
Wow.
So I could do an hour and a half of CD quality audio, on this thing. And now 1 gigabyte, like people would laugh at a 1 gigabyte memory chip. That's like, it's like 32 gigs on a little flash disk for $5 or whatever now. So it's just crazy that the, storage has gone up, 100-fold, and then the size has gone down 100-fold, and the price has gone down 1,000-fold. Yep. It's pretty ridiculous.
It is, yeah. That's crazy. So once you kind of finished up with college and like the electronic music program there, like what kind of started happening after that for you?
After college, I knew I wanted to like make it, whatever it was. And, in my composition degree, I watched the music major kind of shrink from about 200 people who had started the major down to 12 of us who had finished it. So it was a tough program. Most people kind of quit. And then at the end of it, the professor was like, look around, there's 11 of you left. There used to be hundreds. Now pat yourself on the back. You did it. Now you can go get your master's degree so you can be a teacher like me. Because that's the only way you're really going to make money in music.
Yeah.
And I felt like that was such a jaded thing to say in a way. And also I knew it kind of wasn't true.
Yeah.
I knew there was audio engineers. I knew that there was pop producers. I knew there was people making it in bands. I knew there was some songwriter world out there, jingles, film composers. I knew that there was a number of places that someone was making a living with music. And I felt like, why can't it be me in a sense? If these other people are able to do it, then unless it's just luck and connections, if it's some sort of talent or gained skills, I should be able to rise to that occasion in some point in the future. Now, I had no idea how or where I would end up, but I've always just kept sort of a vague target on the horizon of just like this thing that I want to head towards. And I think one reason that I've had the success that I've had in various different things is just the fact that I've never had one concrete vision that I'm trying to force onto the rest of the world, if you know what I mean, or like, change reality for everyone. Yeah. It was much more like see where I can fit in and where I can be useful. And that's going to be, and there's something that I can always do. It's not one of those things to just like let go and just let life happen, but more, there's always stuff that I can learn. There's stuff that I can do to progress, to be ready if an opportunity arises, and to further my knowledge and all that. So I always picked every job I took and everything based on like, is this aligning me towards a better future? In other words, am I going to be like learning things, making contacts, so sort of moving forward rather than being stuck in some sort of thing where I'm not learning or moving forward. So literally every job in high school, I worked at a music instrument store selling synthesizers and digital pianos and tuning guitars, and something good came from all of it, all of the interactions with different customers. And so I had the same kind of job in college selling guitars and synthesizers and stuff. And then right after college, I knew I needed to get out of Santa Cruz because it's like a lovely town, but it's sort of a slow surf town, college town. So San Francisco is the nearest big city. So I moved to San Francisco and got a job at a pro audio dealership, which was sort of similar to what I've been doing working at music instrument stores, but now they're dealing with, tube preamps and microphones and Pro Tool systems. So, so then I was doing installation and training of people who are buying Pro Tool systems. And that really it really made me feel like I was still on this path where I kind of knew I wanted to do music, and I knew this day job wasn't quite music, but the people I'm dealing with are musicians. Kirk Hammett from Metallica needs his hard disk rescued, or Les Claypool from Primus and everything, come in to get a microphone, or Grateful Dead were a big client of ours. So that dealing with their sound reinforcement guys. And I ended up working on my first big album was for Mickey Hart, who was the Grateful Dead drummer.
Wow.
And so I got to work on a record, his solo record up in Marin County. And that was my first time in, big pro studio, Skywalker Sound, and watching the whole kind of machine work,
Yeah.
team work coming together to make an album. And
Wow.
that
So,
really gave me like a bit, I got bit by that bug for sure, of like the studio life. People bring you coffee, people bring you food.
yeah.
You're like sitting around listening to music and finding a way to improve it and make it better. And the social dynamic of it all was really fascinating to me. Having engineer, producer, me being kind of the tape operator, so to speak, editor. So I found that really like exciting, working on, felt like being on a sports team in a sense. You're kind of
Yeah.
working in this tight knit little crew, working on making something good as a product. And I just wanted to do more of that after I got out of that record.
Mm. Yeah, because I think a lot of producers who are kind of up and coming today, or wanting to pursue like a career, or even just make music for fun or whatever, it is kind of a very isolated task, in the sense that that environment is very much gone from electronic music. And I do think like the approach that you took, where, I mean, I think you used to have your Twitter bio. I'm not sure if it's the same, but it's like jack of all trades, master of none. I'm not sure if that was. I think that might have been you. Um,
Yeah, sounds familiar. I'm not sure.
yeah,
I'm not sure if that's still there or not. But yeah, no, that's definitely true. I think of
yeah,
myself that way, as knowing a little about a lot of things,
mm,
and there's someone that knows more than me on basically any facet. And I think that's just how life kind of is. Like, there's always going to be
mm,
some expert out there that knows more than you about something or other. But that doesn't mean that you can't, kind of line up your various interests and talents and do something that would blow away any one of those specialists, because they don't have your point of view, kind of a thing.
And I think I can say this for myself as well, and I'm sure you'd be the same. It's like, if we didn't pursue those opportunities that kind of were a bit outside of the, I guess you could say, traditional scope of a music career, I don't know if we'd be here today. Like, and I think you've kind of gone outside of that with the programming things in the long term as well. Yeah, like for me personally, like I wanted to pursue that originally, and then you know was more interested in the education side of things, and that's how I started working at EDM Prod and doing this podcast now. So I definitely think it's a valuable thing to just be open to those opportunities around you that might be a little different from what you're expecting.
Yeah, following passion is kind of all I've ever done, in a certain
Mm,
sense. Like, you really can't mastermind a future completely. I don't think. Some people, if they have either enough financial resource or something, they can, you can definitely like become stubborn and focused on one goal. And if you
mm,
have the resources, you can help change the world around you to make your goal happen. But
mm,
some things need you know a lot of help to, a team. In other words, there's in
yeah,
EDM, there's rich kids that buy a career more or less in it,
mm,
and you can approach things that way. Um, you, and it's happened even back in the band days before EDM. It was a similar kind of thing where you get some investor to bankroll your band, to some uber rich fan or something like that. You can really make or break
yeah,
a whole band's career and trajectory, and maybe even make that investor some good money as well. And that's
totally.
happened in EDM as well as a lot of private bankrolling, where someone comes from a rich family and they decide that they want a career in EDM. They
Mm,
start taking Ableton lessons. They realize that they're not going to get good enough fast enough. Then they start just buying songs from ghost producers,
yeah,
slapping their name on it, buy some promotion for the thing,
yeah,
et cetera, and fake it till they make it. And that can happen, successfully. To me, that kind of approach, I can't hate on anyone for finding success, whichever way they do it. I'm kind of always, I don't know. I don't come from that mindset really
mm,
of throwing money at problems, but I think that the easier way is always the way with passion. Just to do things because you're kind of doing things for a non-selfish reason, in a sense,
yeah,
and And I see that a lot with aspiring people, just being in slightly the wrong mentality of um, really just waiting for the rewards of being a musician or something like that. And it's not, and it's sort of the wrong mindset. I think it's almost self-defeating, because if you might end up putting in not enough passion or not enough uniqueness or creativity into the product, because you're really just expecting the return. And people that have a little bit more of the mindset of wanting to do something for the sake of doing that something itself, it seems like the much easier way. I mean, I've seen people who completely don't take music seriously and do it as a creative outlet, and then they find success in music, just because what they're doing is interesting and different. And so it's sort of a catch-22, but I often find that if you can get your mind off of the results you want and actually just think about the thing that you're making and trying to make that special, it's to me a much easier route.
Yeah, it's the whole like thing of process over the result. Like just, what would it look like if you just could enjoy what you were doing? I think a lot of people as well don't necessarily define what they're not willing to do to get a result. Like, for me, it would look like, well, I'm not going to bankroll myself and get ghost producers to become a successful producer because it just doesn't interest me. Like, why would I be doing it then? Like,
Right.
maybe some people don't define that, and then they end up in this position where it's like, oh, like I'm a big DJ now, but I just like paid people to do things for me, which, I mean, once again, it's fine if you want that, but I think a lot of people maybe get caught in the trap of assuming the thing they have their eyes on is always the thing that they want to achieve. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, it's different for different people. I mean, there's some people that would not be able to get up on a stage and play someone else's music, let alone whether or not they've slapped their name on it. Just period. I have friends who are just like, that's just not interesting to me to be a DJ playing other songs. I'll only get up there to play my music because it's mine, and so it's personal to them and special, and that's what they want to play, and that's what they want to share. And then there's some people that just want to be the center of attention, and they don't even care about money too much. They'll spend a good chunk of their income on just promoting the next thing and doing the next thing. And I mean, there's a lot of famous people that aren't making a lot of money, for sure, because they're just folding a lot of it back into to keeping the hype train moving, kind of a thing. And yeah, I can't really fault, like, the music industry can be so tough that I can't really fault anyone for finding a successful formula for them.
Yeah.
But I definitely have found through watching many people achieve success from the bedroom that it's really clear to me that the easiest route is to have just passion in the music that you're making.
Yeah.
And then whatever attitude you have can be completely different. Some people have attitudes like, arrogance almost, like, my music's going to be better than everyone else's. You wait and see. I'll show the world. And then there's people that have the completely opposite attitude, of just a very loving attitude of, I just love music, and I love these sounds and these sounds and these sounds. And I don't care if they don't really belong together, or if this isn't legit, this genre, I don't care. And then those people can have success too, if they're doing something that's interesting. And so, it bothers me seeing so much, and this has always sort of been the case. There's always so much sort of nearsightedness with people kind of starting out, and it's hard. I mean, it's hard to understand how the world works and what things are, but I see a lot of like, oh, I can't do that because that's not legit, this style or something, or like so much concern and hesitation to be creative and to take chances, and then you end up, you run the risk of ending up with something that's just utterly generic, and no one's going to really notice or care about it, by trying to follow some purist construct that's really only in your head and that doesn't exist out there necessarily for other people.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Very interesting. It's definitely a big thing in the industry. Switching it up a little bit. So obviously fast forward a few years, you kind of go more down the programming route. And I mean, I think everyone who's listening probably knows you at this point as the creator of Serum, head of Xfer Records, and obviously there's a whole host of other tools you've created out there. And
Sure.
one thing that really interested me, and I'm sure would interest a lot of people listening, is you've mentioned this whole idea of you being involved in meta music and the fact that the products you create have like an influence on the sound of genres, on the sound of artists, of music in general. One thing I was going to ask is, how has that happened in ways that you didn't really expect it to? Like, you kind of put this thing out into the world and then people start doing all these crazy things with it. Like, what surprised you most about that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel in a way I'm just getting started still
Yeah.
on the the potential of the kind of things that I'd like to make, and I'm kind of finally coming of age of getting decent chops down where I can kind of code things up from idea, and in a week to a month I can have something coming out of the speakers that's doing something interesting.
Yeah.
It's Yeah, the meta music thing's a little weird. That was really like something that inspired me to get into making music software, was just the idea that you could be influential over spanning across genres and getting into all these various things. Serum's got popularity in really weird circles that I don't fully understand. K-pop, for instance, it's really huge
Yeah, right.
in Korea in the K-pop scene, and I mean, it kind of makes sense. They seem to sort of take a bunch from a bunch of genres. So there's dubsteppy like sounds and all that kind of stuff that they're throwing in. So
Yeah.
maybe that's how they're using Serum, or maybe in a more general sense. I don't really know. So it's surprising to me certain artist names come up and things like that where I'm like, oh, holy cow, I had no idea. I'm not going to name drop, but some of
Yeah.
the people I respect the most. Oh my god, I had no idea he's using Serum. And then a mutual friend was like, "Oh, you'd never know. He has tons of pseudonyms or whatever." So
Yeah.
you've
Yeah.
probably spoken with him and you don't even know it.
Yeah.
So yeah, in terms of like specific stuff, Serum, I threw like all of these filter classes that I had laying around in. I just sort of threw them all into Serum for the voice filter.
Yeah.
I tried to narrow down a little of the redundancy, but I kind of left in everything because I was sort of like, why not? And
Mm.
one of those was called the Reverb filter, and it's sort of just like an algorithm based on the Freeverb, like a very simple reverb algorithm.
Yeah.
And so when I was almost done with Serum, one of my sound designers was saying, "Oh, this is going to be like a huge thing. Just wait and see. Like people are going to, you know, make whole genre out of this reverb filter or something." I was like, I don't know, dude. You're kind of that's kind of crazy. It's just a wacky. It's interesting, but I didn't really see it that way. But it
Yeah.
kind of happened. I mean, the Riddim genre, I can't take any credit for. Obviously, I didn't choose for what people to use or do or make, but
Yeah.
apparently, and it's not just the reverb filter, but apparently Serum's really was sort of used heavily in the genesis of Riddim stuff, and so
Yeah.
arguably there's some people have attributed Serum to that genre a bit, but I don't. I feel like an outsider to it all, and
Sure.
it definitely wasn't by design. Like I said, a sound designer of mine was kind of right that people did get into using the reverb filter a lot, but that wasn't something that I had a master plan over.
Totally. I definitely hear it on so much of that, yeah, kind of rhythm based stuff. Like, it definitely has characterized a lot of that modern sound of that genre. That I think that and the all pass and the combs filter, like I've played around with those, and I feel like people seem to, I don't know if you've seen this, but people seem to alternate around those ones and get some crazy effects out of them.
Yeah, I mean, those are the ones that Deadmau5 and I were always using back in the day. Like we had just a simple bare bones VSD that was just basically the same thing, the filters, but just with direct sliders and
Right.
no modulations, or you couldn't really do much fun with them besides host automate.
Mm.
But we would use religiously, we'd use the all passes to sort of get signal separation and things, and for
Yeah.
in the chain of heavy processing and that kind of a thing, you can definitely do interesting stuff with running it before distortion and the like.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, no, I do notice those filters getting a lot of mileage, and in a way, I'm not surprised because it was the ones that we were also gravitating towards because they're the most unnatural. But at the same time, I don't really take too much credit for that. It was really just me throwing everything in there, and so I don't really feel like it was anything that happened by design
Right.
so much. I hope in the future to do things that are a little more steering people towards what I think will be musically expanding choices, essentially. And so, so down the road here, I plan to have some pretty big updates with some stuff that I think will, people will consider innovative. And I think it's stuff that will be audible on records as well. And
Cool.
so that's exciting to me. I feel like, my story's not complete yet. And I feel like there's a lot more, now that I really have confidence in it, I feel like there's a lot more of the story that can be told, and I can kind of finally get things that I feel proud of. I mean, I'm very proud of Serum's success, but to me, Serum really represents like the best I could do, and it's strange. It's strange for that to be good enough to have it get to that level, because I really didn't expect Serum to compete with the big boys.
Yeah.
Since I thought that it would just be like like a little secret weapon that some guys would know about under the radar. But it really took off, and that's allowed me to, invest time into doing, big rewrites to the thing in entirety. And so I'm excited because, I mean, I think I have some nice gifts coming for everyone who's supported me, with free updates that I've sort of mentally pledged to.
Awesome.
I think over the coming years, there's going to be a pretty incredible growth to Serum.
Awesome. No, I'm looking forward to those myself as well.
Nice.
It's very interesting because I remember that when Serum first came out, like what year did it come out again?
2014.
2014, and I remember it being like, because the obvious kind of wavetable staple at the time was Massive, and when it came out, it kind of was like, oh, there's this new kid on the block, I guess, and from an outsider's perspective, I guess, like unlike other synths that had come out at the time, it kind of just got attention really fast, and then within a year or two, it seemed like it was had very much overtaken some of the other big players. And I mean, now, like, it's in the niche of EDM kind of genres, it seems to be probably the go-to. Like, we use it for all of our courses as like the staple synth. We recommend it that people, get on Splice or buy it or
That's
whatever.
great. Nice.
Like, from an outsider's perspective, it seems like one of the key things that made it successful, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, is the visual feedback. I feel like maybe, I don't know, it wasn't the first synth that did it, but it seemed to be like at the time the best synth around that kind of combined the rich feature set with good visual feedback. Do you think that was key in it succeeding, like retrospectively?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was pretty crucial. It's always hard to know, what would have gone different if you had done some different things or whatnot. But the visual feedback was something that was a big part for me in making Serum. I had an interest to make a synth, and at the same time, I was working on tracks a lot in the studio. Still, I was still like a sort of semi in demand guy in LA. People would come to artists that were on major labels or whatever. They want some beats on their song, or they want, whatever. So I was doing a lot of stuff with various artists, and when people would come in, you're kind of closer to like a songwriting. A lot of it was kind of closer to a songwriting like mindset, right? Where you're just trying to get stuff down. And I never really wanted to use presets personally, just because I've always been such a synth nerd and I've always loved kind of making sounds.
Yeah.
And I found like using Massive in the context of having clients sitting behind you was just very like sort of stressful and not very pleasant of an experience, because yeah, you really couldn't see things. You couldn't see times on the envelope. You couldn't see where your LFO's playing back. There was so much lack of visual feedback that it made it very frustrating. And so that was a big thing that I wanted. Not thinking that it would make Serum successful, but I was thinking about just really checking off the boxes for me. What were the things that were making me not feel excited to make sound in Massive?
Yeah.
And visual feedback was one of the biggest factors of it. And so a lot of the visuals of Serum are directly because of that. Like seeing the wavetable is directly because you could not in Massive, and having envelopes that you can see the times on and grab the times and everything was similarly. Yeah, I spent a lot more time on the user interface of Serum than I spent on like the actual DSP side of it. And that I think was really something that I just knew was important. I think that's like a unique thing about my success on it, because I didn't go to school for programming or back to school, didn't open a book on C++. I didn't do anything. And I'm not saying that I'm particularly clever or bright, because that's honestly kind of not the case. I think it's much more that I'm stubborn. So I just kind of stuck with it over 10 years, essentially. Stuck with making little plugins that I wasn't completely satisfied with, but knowing, either the next one will be better, or I can come back and make this better in the future or whatever. But I really just stuck with things because I knew that that there was things that I wanted. Again, it kind of falls back into the passion thing. It was like I found interest and passion in the making plugins. And everyone likes to feel special, and that was sort of also something that I kind of felt from it. It was like in this peer of everyone I knew, these DJs, these music producers, these pro guys in LA, engineers or whatever, none of them knew how to make plugins. So I felt like even though I wasn't great at making plugins, it allowed me to be viewed amongst this peer group in a slightly different way, as, oh, here's a guy that might be able to offer solutions on a more technical level. And so, yeah, I really felt like for me, it worked out really well, because I went from, as I said in college, clearly not being the best piano player, just not being the best musician, to moving into working on records and stuff like that, where you're not the artist, essentially, right? You're sort of a hired gun. And so you're sort of down a tier on the totem pole, so to speak.
Yeah.
Then I moved into being an artist a bit, but then, I was surrounded by the likes of deadmau5 and other people. So again, I wasn't the most talented one in the group. And then with the plugins, I really finally found something where I felt like that was something that no one else, at least that I knew, I could do with. As I said earlier, there's always someone that knows more than you, and there's definitely people that are better programmers than me on a variety of facets. But my background definitely made it, I think, for the case for the unique success of stuff like Serum, where it's like I know what it's like to be a musician sitting there wanting to make a sound. I know that so well from decades of doing it. I know what it's like to be in the creative flow where you don't want to have to think about things too technically.
Yeah.
And sort of to the best of my ability, I tried to make the thing that I would want to purchase. And that's how I've always approached the making of the plugins is make the thing I would want to buy, or make the thing that I would want to use. Because I can't find that somewhere else. Ultimately, there's not a better product you could just buy, or whatnot. And so that's generally my approach, is trying to make the thing that I feel that I'm missing in the arsenal.
Totally.
And then just knowing that other people will recognize that too, hopefully.
No, I think that's a great approach. Once again, to draw the parallel to music, it's about if you're a producer, you want to make the music that you would want to listen to. So it's apply that to
that's right.
Whatever.
That's right.
Yeah.
You make that's what I would always tell my students when I was teaching at Icon Collective. They'd say, Steve, I've, over my year or two here, I've really honed my chops. I can really like nail all these sounds I didn't know how to make before, but I can't find my sound. Like, how do I find my sound? And it's exactly like you say. It's like, make the music that you want to hear. Ideally, make the music that you want to hear that you can't find anywhere.
Yes.
Because that's the thing that's really going to make you make something that sticks out to other people too. They'll be like, oh my God, I haven't heard something quite like this. But you can also do it on the more immediate level of like, oh, I got a show coming up next month. I just need to really, really create something with this really drawn out build or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm going to make it. I'm going to make the thing with the really drawn out build for my show, rather than scouring Beatport anymore or whatever. And so, yeah, it's definitely such a great attitude to do. And I think that we're just very lucky to live in a time where like things can get made in a digital sense, that you can sit down with tools like Ableton or tools like a C++ IDE or whatever. And then you have the internet where you can share these things instantly. It's like, again, sounding like the old guy, but as one of the people who grew up without internet, that's one of the most mind-blowing changes. And I feel very lucky to have had a childhood without a cell phone tethered to me.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Where's Steve? I don't know.
Yeah. He could be down the street at the shopping center. Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. And one cool thing I really liked that you did, and I guess this kind of maybe, I mean, you can dive into this, was something that you wanted for Serum as well, as the whole, I think you were the first rent to own plugin on Splice, if I'm not mistaken. And that was kind of another big part of Serum and its growth, I guess. Yeah. Do you want to share a bit about how that came about?
Yeah. I mean, it's cool because I think that changed things. I mean, maybe on a slightly more boring, like financial side of things, but that changed the industry a little bit, because I think not only Splice, but I don't think anyone period had ever done rent to own, as far as I know, on software, but I've got to assume that that's been done in software elsewhere. But in music software, I'm pretty sure we were the first to do any kind of rent to own. Adobe had subscriptions and all that, but essentially Splice had seen Splice, their original product was called Splice Studio, or maybe just called Splice at the time.
Yeah.
But Splice Studio was just allow you to back up your session projects and collaborate with other users. And I think that's still a part of their ecosystem.
Yeah.
And then what they were doing with Splice Studio is they were parsing people's project files, so that if you were collaborating with me or vice versa, and I uploaded it, could say, oh, Steve changed the bass track or whatever. So long story short, they had seen Serum shooting up the charts, and they were sort of like, wow, we haven't seen any plugin ever like gain this much popularity so fast. And then they started asking me about sales, and things got into piracy really quick because most of the users are not paying for it. And then I was sort of like, well, that's just how it is. And, I'm not willing to use an iLock or do something that's going to prevent that. Yeah. I'd kind of rather people use it than use something else. So they said, well, what do you think? We think you're missing out on lost revenue from people that maybe just can't afford $189.
Yeah.
And I thought of myself in college where, finding $20 in the couch like changed your week, because you're like, we're ordering pizza tonight.
Yeah.
So I was sort of like, man, yeah, I've kind of forgotten about that, being in the pro LA scene where $189 is like pretty cheap for most guys. They're like, I use one sound on one thing, it's paid for itself, kind of a thing. And so, so I was like, yeah, that's right. That is something to consider. So I had a meeting with them. They ran some numbers by me. They did, whatever facts and figures, calculation stuff. And they were sort of like, we think you can make this much money over the next 5 years from doing a rent to own with us. And I was sort of like, it was a really big number. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, it was, the kind of money that I never thought that I would see in a lifetime. And so I was like, well, act cool, Steve, act cool. And I was like, well, I guess we should try it, and so we went ahead. It was a little experimental for all of us. But they were actually right. Their conservative numbers turned out to actually be even conservative, and it did even
Wow.
better than they were saying. So that was super win-win. It also probably didn't hurt that I don't do any advertising and I don't do really any marketing, and they put some money behind that.
Yeah.
So that probably helped Serum gain a level of kind of like just attention. And then it was very win-win. They already had 300,000 plus users at the time. So
Yeah.
now those users are getting email blast or banner when they visit Splice or whatever about Serum Rent to Own. So
Yeah.
I think there was some like cannibalizing early on of just Splice users, getting them onto Serum. But then I think the tides over time may have even changed the other way, that I get told a lot that people sign up for Splice just to get the rent to own for Serum. So
Yeah.
it works both ways, I guess.
Yeah, that was me back in the day when I first started out. I was like, "Yep, Sprinter and Serum, first thing I got." Yeah,
Awesome. That's
yeah,
great. Yeah, it's been really good. I've been really pleased by it. How many, thank you emails I've gotten from people saying I couldn't afford this out of pocket, but now with the rent to own, I just made my last payment and now I own it. And like I said earlier, I'm really happy to try to kick back to all those people in the future with, with new cool stuff that they didn't necessarily expect to be getting out of Serum. And so, it's easy to be cynical in this world because everyone kind of tries to milk you for whatever they can. And most people charge for updates. And I saw some ad campaign lately from some unnamed plugin developer that was basically like, don't pay for updates, buy our subscription update plan. And I'm like, that's paying for updates, dude. Like,
yes.
Why not just make them free? And
I
so
have no idea who you're talking about.
okay.
Yeah.
Let's keep it like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
but no, it's strange to me that, like, I don't know, it's full on propaganda. In fact, it used propaganda artwork, but
Yeah.
but it's weird to me because it's like, I don't know. I believe that there's enough people out there that can make something sustainable off, like, if you charge a reasonable amount up front. Now, granted, different people have different business models. Back to like the DJs, I can't blame anyone for trying whatever business model they want, whether it's freemium, premium, subscription, whatever it is. But I just go by my own gut of, like I said, of thinking of me as a customer, and then thinking about what would I put up with. Or, I mean, I've been a customer of so much software, and I know how it feels when they say, okay, upgrade now for $59. And you're like, $59 for what? That one new little thing? And I just want the bug fixed, dude. Your thing crashes on me every other week or whatever. So, like, I felt early on, like, no, be cool to the people that support you and, like, don't charge them for updates. Maybe you can make another product in the future and maybe they'll have the loyalty to buy that. But even more important in a way is just the word of mouth, right? Because the way the music industry really runs is on word of mouth. So if people believe in something or use something, that tends to trigger some residual sales. And so that's always just been my thought, really, is just keep people happy, and then they'll tell their friends to buy it when the friend's asking for their serial number or whatever.
Yeah.
No, dude, go support that guy.
Yeah.
And so it's worked out great. Like I said, I never really expected Serum to get this popular. So at this point now, I can feel like as long as it keeps selling a little bit, I can invest money into just giving back to those who have supported it. And innovation is a big part of that to me. It's not really just about like keeping up with the Joneses with whatever other synths might do in their synths, but really to me it's a little bit more about what don't they do, or like what are the things that I want that I just can't seem to find anywhere, and that's the things that right now I'm working on, is stuff that nothing else has really tried. Of course, you kind of risk a little bit of insanity doing things that are not done before.
Yeah.
Some things are for a good reason. Maybe they haven't been done before.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of ideas that might be a little bit of a curveball to some people at first. They're going to be like, what the heck? But I think after some time, it has the potential to really make Serum a one of a kind thing. and
Mm,
and Serum too, which is sort of the official thing. I'm
cool.
saving up a lot of this stuff where it'll have something for everyone in it for sure too. So
Awesome, man.
I'm not worried about people being like, you ruined it. But maybe someone will say that.
Nah, I'm sure people will love it, man. Um, do you think, like, I guess, what is it, 7 years on since you first released Serum? Like,
Yeah.
do you think, obviously, since then there has been competitors, so to speak, rise up, and a lot of them taking a lot of inspiration from Serum. Do you think that's motivated you to kind of, not do the same things as, obviously you said not the same things they're doing, but different things? Or is it just something you were doing anyway? Like, has that affected the way you work at all?
No, not really. I mean, it's kind of funny. It's, I mean, not to get too deep on it, but like I have inferiority complex, and like it's something that a lot of people suffer from. It's like sort of imposter syndrome stuff, right? And
Mm,
so it's sort of like really easy for me to get that. Like I got that in DJing, and I actually realized later thinking about it that I kind of self defeated having any DJ career, because I just felt like I didn't come from that world. I wasn't a raver. I wasn't like, I never had this like DJ passion, if you know what I mean. Like I came from the
sure.
instruments and I came from the bands. And so it's actually happened a number of times in my life. I've just found myself in positions where I feel like a total imposter, like I'm just not supposed to be there, but yet here I am. And then the programming is a similar one, even though I come from Silicon Valley. I was like, if anyone has a birthright to programming, I guess it should be
Yeah.
me. But no, but yeah, programming's for everyone. But it's I just still really felt like I have an older brother who's a whiz at programming, and early on, when as a kid, I got into music in part because I realized I was never going to be as good with computers as him. And it was just one of those things where you're like, well, I'll find something, I'll go shine in my own way and go do my own thing. And so, getting, I'm pretty self-conscious, although my confidence has grown on my programming ability. But so there's one side to it, which ties into my brother a bit. And this is definitely like, I should lay back in the couch more for this, but it's like, the idea of competition, right? And
Yeah.
early on, as a younger brother with a talented older brother, competing meant losing, basically, to me, and competing was
Right.
no fun. And so I was never much of a competitive person. I mean, video games can be fun because it's whatever, if you're not taking it seriously, but never been much of a competitive person at anything. And I'm not motivated by that. Competition kind of motivates me to quit, in a sense,
Right.
right? So because of that, when I see people take things that I deem as my creations,
Yeah.
it feels like they're trying to get me to quit. It's
Right.
really hard to say. I feel like a knife in the heart, in a way, like someone's actually trying to inflict pain and disappointment on me, and that's their intent. Why they're
Right.
doing it is to inflict pain on me, and that's awful. That's like a very like bad mental state, right? Because then you feel pain, right? You feel
Yeah.
hurt, and I'm not. Yeah, and I'm not a competitive type, so it doesn't motivate me to, well, I'll show them or something like that. But when I stew on it, when I see something that's, and there's been a handful of them now, when I'm like, okay, that's just like clearly trying to bite on my thing,
Yeah.
and I stew on it for a little and go, huh, and then I'm back to what I always knew in a certain sense, which is that, well, what's the thing that I want to do? I want to do something that nothing else is doing.
Yeah.
And so it's pretty easy to just ignore the things that are trying to do the things that I'm already doing from a place of no one else had done that before me. And so it's sort of
Mm.
like, to me, just trying to blaze a trail of innovation and leave people a bit in the wake is kind of like my mindset is like, I've got definitely more of that in me, in a sense.
Sure.
So yeah, that's my main thing. But when people send me feature requests, and it happens, and it's not even, yeah, not even stuff to necessarily do with anything similar to Serum or my software, but someone will say, hey, there's this such and such plugin that does this such and such thing. can you put that into Serum? And it's like, to me, that's the least inspiring way to approach something, because it's like, well, what fun is that? What fun is that to just like steal their idea and
Yeah.
put it into Serum for you, for this one person? And
Yeah.
it's like, and selling more copies is not a motivation. Sometimes people go, oh, it'd be so much whatever. Or like the only motivation to me is the motivation to do something new. So like the best way to, if you're trying to get into my head, the best way to do that is to not mention the other product,
Yeah.
or maybe casually say, well, there's this thing that kind of does it like this, but they didn't do what would really make it cool, which would be this other thing. And
Totally.
then that's when I get excited. I'm like, oh my God, yeah, there's so much like unexplored territory within that little thing that could totally come up with creative new things. And so that's what really still motivates me, is like the stuff I'm working on right now, which I won't get into specifics on, but it's like, it's sort of like there was like all these abilities in plain sight that people have kind of overlooked in terms of just like, signal and music creation stuff is just like, it's really interesting when you kind of find like, oh my God, people have skipped over this little like pocket of where you could do really creative things or create tools that allow people to do creative things. So, so I'm having fun right now. And I mean, there's nothing more exciting than like calling up your half finished thing and having stuff that actually sounds good come out, and you're like, oh my God,
that's
people,
sick.
People are going to get so excited by this kind of a thing. And yeah,
that's what it's all. That's what keeps you going, is that little bit of like, oh, this is actually good. Like, yeah, this is gonna.
Yeah.
This pays
It's the
off.
same as music. You're working on a track and you're like, oh my God, people are gonna lose their shit when they hear this build up to this drop or whatever. And you can just, and you can almost like imagine being one of them. And that's like really the best mindset I think to be in as a musician. Either just like partying and having fun in the studio is a great one, or else thinking about yourself at a younger age as you're like, don't try to just imagine some generic fan of your music. Think of yourself, but younger, because that's someone that you really know. That's someone that you remember and And it's weird as we change in age, because now you might know too much about the production, and it might be very different than that experience you had at 15 or 17 or whenever it was when you experienced this first epic sound system. But that person's still inside you, and you still remember being that person. So to me, that's like my advice I like to give people when you're trying to like just make judgment calls on something, whether it's artwork or anything. Just be like, think about your younger self as the fan, and do it for that person. Do it for your younger self. What would they get excited by? And so, tangential, but
no, it's good, man. I was actually going to ask you, how is like are you working on any of your own music much at the moment, and how's that all going for you?
Not much at the moment, no. I'm so much more interested in working on the tools. It's kind of become it's a weird thing. I guess it's the meta music thing in a sense, but it's a weird thing when you just know that your time is just much better spent working on a feature or a bug fix or whatever it is. Because, if there's one bug fix, say it's causing, I don't know, a crash or something. And then it's like, okay, there's going to be 1,000 people hitting this crash. Maybe 100 of them are going to write to me or whatnot. But like, how frustrating, how much music's going to get lost in 1,000 crashes, and how much frustration. And then how long will it take me to fix that? And like, that's my time best spent for a day or two is finding, addressing, and fixing that crash, rather than, because I'm the only one that can do that. And then when it comes to making music, arguably I'm the only one that could make that piece of music. But
totally.
I just feel like my time is best spent. It feels like selfish too much for me to work on music. It feels like I might as well be like rotting away watching TV or something. Would be kind of the same, unfortunately.
Interesting.
Where it does feel valuable is when I can get feedback back into the software. So like I do obviously like to use my own stuff, and then and just tinkering around is as far as I get. I just generally don't try to actually finish things, but for me the software development is very iterative. So I'm like bringing it into the DAW, messing with it, kind of mock making music, and then I'm like, right, okay, I need to fix that right now. And
Sure.
unfortunately, there's always just 100 things that you need to do. So it's pretty hard to get anywhere on the music without going like, right, that, and that. I'll go take care of those things.
Sure.
Um, yeah.
So it's like you're giving feedback on yourself, sort of thing, by like making a little idea or mini track per se.
Yeah, sometimes things happen where like, people will send in a feature request and they'll say like, "Oh, I can't believe you don't have this and it's really annoying," or something. And then until you hit it yourself, you just don't know how annoying it is. And for instance, like last time I was making music was like, or released music was last year with Deadmau5, and
Yep.
so we did a BSOD EP
Mm,
up in Toronto right before COVID, and we were going to tour it and all, which was kind of a bummer, but got the music out at least. And then
yeah.
used Serum completely for all of it, and Serum and some drum samples, and that was
Nice.
basically the EP. And what happened, I think, 4 times watching Joel using Serum was he would want to switch wavetables, and then he'd click to load the next preset instead,
Oh, yep.
accidentally. And then he would lose the whole preset, and he'd go, "Fuck!" And then an hour later, same fucking thing. He's like, just wiped another preset out. And so, like, literally right there in the studio, I'm like, I'll add a ask before saving on the preset loading, because
That's
like after
amazing.
watching him lose 3 presets that way, I was like, man, like I've never personally mistaken the preset advance for a wavetable advance. But yeah, I
Yeah.
should probably ask you if you want to save changes if you've like turned a knob or something. So I've added that into Serum now.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, now it just brings in support people going, "How do I turn off this annoying 'Are you sure?' message?" And I'm like, you can turn it
Yeah.
off in preferences. Like, can't win
Yeah.
them all.
Yeah.
Maybe I should up the threshold on how much you have to turn something, or have the preset how many notes it has to play or something before it asks you. But
Yeah.
um,
It's never over.
yeah, that's definitely true. Can't please everyone either.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. As we bring this to a close, actually, on the topic of, I guess, you being the sole support person for all of your products, is that still the case?
No, I got a support person that's helping me part time,
Okay.
who's really great. Shredward is one of the sound designers on the factory content, and he's a friend
Sweet.
from Austin. And Shred's like also a pro like tour manager, and so he's going out on a big U.S. tour with a big artist for a few months. So I'm going to be
Sure.
back in the support role full time, I think.
Yeah.
If he's as busy as it looks like he's going to be. But no, Shred's been really great, and he kind of knocks out all of the stuff that's like, I forgot my email I used to purchase and stuff like.
Sure.
Because really, at this point, the software has gotten pretty stable, and I have very few like technical problems coming up if people are up to date.
Sure.
About half the technical emails are just people that haven't updated yet, and like, oh, that's fixed. That's fixed.
Yeah.
Yeah, fortunately, support's in general gone really down, and now more and more the percentage of it is just customer service. People trying to locate old purchases is like
Sure.
pretty much a daily one. Still a little bit of user education stuff, like the new users. I've never installed a plugin in Fruity Loops before. How do I do that? And that's still pretty regular.
Do you just like
And
link to a video at this point? Like, here's an installation video? Or
yeah, I should. No, I mean, I was talking about having one like made. I was kind of joking on Twitter or something about doing one in like the style of the Schoolhouse Rock videos or something, like this little cartoon VST going into a VST folder.
yeah.
I think that would be like a great. I mean, a little patronizing, but it would be pretty good.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, I generally just give them the explicit directions of how to do it,
Fair.
because to me that's like, I just have that in text and copy and paste. And
Yeah.
it's unfortunate, but it is a convoluted process, especially in FL Studio. But any DAW,
Yeah.
this stuff is not really musician level stuff. It's sort of computer nerdy stuff to have these DLL files and pointing them to a folder, and nothing really explains well how it is. It's a little easier on Mac. It's a little more just works kind of a thing. But yeah, I don't really blame the users. It's really confusing thing to do if you've never done it before.
Yeah.
What's really changed is that Serum's so popular that it's become people's first VST purchase. Whereas
Yeah.
with my other plugins, it was never someone's first VST. So
Yeah.
So I've definitely hit more user education than I did in the past.
Fair.
But yeah, no, it's reasonable. I don't expect, some people are like, how come it's not in the manual? And it's like, well, I'd have to list like every program, but I probably should do that. I should probably get, FL Studio and Ableton. Like, in fact, I think we have that in the upcoming manual revision. Been working on a major Serum retooling of the manual.
Cool. Nice.
Although they're trying to take all my stupid jokes out, I'm gonna have to fight to get this
Oh, that makes it the most fun. That's like the
right.
things that make someone's day.
That's right. That's what I think too.
Yeah.
It's music industry. Come on.
Yeah. Nah, awesome, man. Well, sweet. As we bring things to a close, like one thing I guess I wanted to ask is you see a lot of producers, I guess, face to face, when you are doing these support tasks and stuff like that. Based on your experience, both as a producer, seeing what these people are doing, as a software developer making, products for music, and is there something you see people make, like a mistake people are making just in general with their music, or whether it's like just for fun or their career or whatever? Is there like a thing that you see happening a lot that you're like, that shouldn't happen?
Yeah, that's a challenge. I mean, there's different levels of musicians that I come across for sure. From the biggest pros to the people starting out that don't know anything. I really see the full spectrum of it. I think that there's a large number of people in electronic music that are lacking education in music.
Sure.
And it's something that I kind of understand is the like desire to kind of not need to know everything. And I think that that's great. So first of all, like, not to contradict what I'm about to say, but like there's no any one thing you need to know, right? So it's like having your own approach or having your own direction could be enough, and you could do music with a xylophone and two flutes or something. Like, you could do something totally weird and maybe make it work. So there's like totally not rules, but at the same time, what I do see a lot of is that people can't really fit a melody and chords together, and that kind of like concerns or bothers me for someone to have a career longevity.
Yeah.
If you really can't understand kind of chords and melody. And I don't think that you need to know like jazz harmonies, and I don't think you need to know like music theory even, really, right? You just sort of need a musical ear, for lack of a better word, to like know when notes are right or wrong, or to like be able to figure out, hopefully, I don't really know if, like, I guess there is a such thing as talent, but I tend to not think about things in terms of talent. I think a little bit just more in brain development. And it's like people should get to the point where they can hear chords or melody and know if a note's right or wrong in the key or not in the key, kind of a thing. Like I said, I don't think you need to become a master in music theory. And there's something to be said for a little blissful ignorance. Sometimes it's nice to not know too much about everything, because then your brain starts doing reductionism. Instead of how does this make you feel, it's like, oh, well, that's just a C major 7 chord and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, that's not just a C major 7 chord. That's a mood. That's giving me a vibe right now, in the context of where it's going. Yeah. So it's really a dangerous game to learn stuff and start thinking in a reductionist way. And
a good
so
point.
So ignorance is bliss sometimes when it comes to just how does something make you feel. And sometimes even having things in slightly relative keys, like there's a classic house thing you hear in a lot of old school house music where they just have a sample, and the sample would have a chord that's slightly in a different key, or they're transposing it, so it's kind of making things mismatch keys. But that there's something that can still be very cool within that, right? So I'm definitely not a stickler for rules. At the same time, I do hear a lot of like amateur music that like shocks me sometimes. Like someone will, say something really nice about Serum and say, hey, check out my music if you get a chance. And I listen to the music. And so very commonly, I'm just hearing this sort of trend where it's like, wow, there's a lot of people making music that really don't know chords and melody together, like to get something that's musically interesting. And it's, again, like there is no such thing as like these talking about music in blanket terms. So I hate to say that it's necessary, because you could make, techno or dub techno or a whole bunch of deep house. There's a whole bunch
Yeah.
of genres where you can get away with knowing no music theory for sure, because there's just not a lot musically going on.
Sure.
But if you really want to make music that's going to reach masses, that's be above the underground,
Yeah.
you, especially if you really want to make music that's going to be on the radio or like kind of pop format,
Yeah.
the most memorable songs are the songs that you could reduce to a piano and vocal, or just left hand and right hand on a piano, and someone could go, "Oh, I know what song you're playing. That's Levels by Avicii. I can tell by just what you're doing on the piano." And
Totally.
so it's always going to be that way. And that I think personally that like that that practicing piano, studying piano, taking lessons, as belittling as it might be, because piano is not easy, and your piano teacher is going to be a lot better than you, and you're going to be probably doing things you don't want to do, maybe like reading sheet music or playing Mozart or whatever. But to me, I would recommend to absolutely every single producer to take piano lessons, no matter what level of piano ability you're at. Take the lessons, because you're gonna learn something, and you're gonna get better and better at this keyboard, which we all have one on our desks more or less, right? And it's just the more that you can just hear something in your head and then play it out of that, it just makes the studio experience so much better. And then more and more you're going to start developing that part of your brain around melody and harmony. And again, that's after it's all produced and mixed and mastered. That's what in people's brains, it kind of can get reduced back down to just that melody and harmony and that memorable stuff. So I think it's important to have the ability going in on that if possible. That's why I say piano lessons for all
There's so many resources out there as well. Like even if you, for whatever reason, can't get a piano tutor, or like online, there's heaps of stuff to learn at least the basics of this. Like, I mean, shameless plug, we do have a course, Songwriting for Producers, but there's heaps of stuff out there. Like, it's worth investing a bit of time into, especially in the early days. I'd highly agree with you there on that one.
Yeah, definitely.
One last question.
Sure.
This is a question I'm kind of asking everyone. If you had a time machine and like, I believe kind of like, live with no regrets. Yeah. Like learn from your mistakes. I'm all about that. But just for the sake of analogy, if you did have a time machine, what's one thing you'd go back and change that you have done in the past?
Oh, yeah. I don't know. It's really hard because of the hypothetical nature of things, right? If I change that one thing, then maybe other things wouldn't have happened. So
yeah.
I strangely live between a constant fear of regret and then also having no regrets about the past. So it's sort of like, so I'm like very fearful of doing something stupid right now or in the future that then in the future I would regret. But then when it comes to any present moment, I don't really look back and say I wish I did things differently.
That's fair. Yeah.
If I look back and say how could I have been in even a better place maybe or something like that, which is hard for me to do because it takes me very little to be satisfied. I mean, ultimately, food and shelter and the internet, I'm pretty happy. So I think looking back, I do realize that if I had believed in myself more, I could have achieved a lot more. And not saying that I regret that, so to speak, but I'm positive, like I kind of touched on earlier, if I really believed in myself as a DJ and said, no, I studied in music, I know what I like, I blah, 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 I could have really honed being a DJ, done DJ mixes, which my booking agent and manager wanted me to always do. But I basically self-destructed any kind of DJ career just because I felt like that wasn't something that I was legit on. But I do think that was worked out for the best for me, obviously, because then Serum wouldn't have happened and all that, right? So, but I do see even with Serum, if I had believed in myself or believed in Serum more, I could have taken a bigger risk. I could have invested some savings into it and tried to license or hire more code and more people to help build it to be even more than it is. But again, kind of no regrets on it. It's definitely, people are happy with what it is. I think it's really powerful and flexible as is. And now I have the future that I can do those things that I'm talking about, which is what I'm doing right now, which is like investing both time and money into taking it to sort of a level that's beyond what I'm capable of by myself. But
so that's kind of what's on the horizon for you over the next 12 months, is just focusing on improving Serum per se.
Yeah, no, next 10 years,
10 years.
Yeah, no, I have some sort of lofty goals for Serum 2, and it's not, and I have no timetable for it. So it
Yeah.
might be next year, might not
Sure.
be next year. I'm not really sure. I was initially trying to get it out this year, but then I decided that some things came up within it that I think are really exciting. And I've decided that no, this stuff needs to be like, there's no reason to rush something out. You know what I mean? It's not like being an artist, where unfortunately artists kind of need to keep their name out there a bit.
Oh, yeah.
So you either have to run to social media or you have this or that. I kind of feel like, well, no one's going to forget Serum, even if something amazing comes out in mid 2022 or whatever. I think with what Serum 2 will be, it's gonna nothing. It would be like lightning striking twice if something comes close to the once again wacky things that I'm throwing together in there.
No, that's awesome, man.
So I'm really excited by it, and it's really, to me, that's like, getting off of your initial question, but like seeing myself and the other people involved excited, and us not worrying too much about, there's no company above me or anything. There's no sales pressure. Oh, this has got to be big or anything like that. Is one of the greatest joys of being able to do the thing that's like, no, this has just got to make us excited and be the thing that we want. And then if we are truly satisfied and proud of it, then we don't even have to wonder if other people are going to like it. Of course they will. So
awesome, man.
So yeah, it's good having that confidence. I wish I had it younger. To anyone out there listening, just you're 100% legit. No one can take you from you. And just keep that in mind. It's just like, for me, me and Joel, our music took off the minute I realized that we were 100% legit and underground. And then I almost started getting bummed, because I was like, man, this is going to get bigger than the underground really quick. And then that feeling was completely true. It happened just like that. So there's something about, you can realize you have the goods and that your goods are unique, even if, and you're obviously always going to doubt yourself and all that at the same time. So don't be surprised by that aspect. But yeah, you're legit. Don't quit.
100%, man. I love that. Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much, Steve, for jumping on, man. This has been super fun.
Great. Thank you, Hayden. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Until people start hearing about what you're doing, where can people find you online and that sort of thing?
Xferrecords.com is my website. There's a contact page that goes to me. And then on Twitter, I goof off once in a while, which is Steve_Duda, DUDA. And that's basically the extent of my online debauchery. I mean, there's a Discord for the Xfer users that's kind of fun as well. If you're a Serum customer, you can go to the Serum forum on xferrecords.com. You'll see a link to the Discord, and I kind of keep it private for Serum customers, but there's some silly hijinks going on there from time to time.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you again, Aiden.